what's the secret to happiness? What's the one thing, or maybe what are the couple things, right? Most of us could do a couple of things if we wanted to get something like being happy or being happy more often. And the truth is, it's actually a lot simpler than most people think. It's just that too many people haven't been taught how to actually do things that lead to happiness. When I went to school, I got taught how to do English and math and science, but nobody ever taught me, like, how do I just enjoy being alive? How do I wake up on a daily basis feeling good? And fortunately or unfortunately, I learned for myself as a result of going through a lot of struggles. As a young man, I was in group homes, and I had basically 3 different high schools I went to because I was getting moved around all the time. I was on drugs, so I was extra unhappy because I was using drugs. I really didn't like anyone, including myself. I didn't really, I remember one time thinking to myself, like, what am I doing here? I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be born. Why am I even alive? This is miserable. And it only came after I kind of started looking. I was like, I don't understand. Like, why am I so unhappy? And the first, and I think the most important thing for a sense of joy or fulfillment or happiness, I think the first most important thing is feeling like you have a sense of control of your life. And people tend to give that control up to the government, to their neighbors, to their family. But the truth is, you always have control over your life. It's only that you say, well, I couldn't do anything because, like, in my situation as a kid, I couldn't do anything. The government made me go to group homes, right? But, when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, when I was, really unhappy, I wasn't in group homes anymore. So I was choosing at that point to stay unhappy, despite the fact that situation had changed. And I was putting the blame somewhere else. I was putting the responsibility of my own happiness somewhere else. There's a great book written by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. And in that book, he talks about being in the Nazi concentration camps and how basically his mind was the only thing that the Nazis couldn't take from him. They could take his home, they could take his belongings, they could take his things, they could even take his life, but they couldn't decide for him how he was going to believe and how he was going to feel and think on a daily basis. He decided for himself then and there in a Nazi concentration camp that he was going to be in control of how he perceived the situation he found himself in, and ultimately, his level of happiness and fulfillment on a daily basis. And so the way that you kind of take back control of the responsibility of your joy, your fulfillment, your happiness, the way you do that is by looking at the areas of your life that are making you the most unhappy. So maybe you're overweight and you don't have great self-esteem because of it, because you look into yourself in the mirror and you know you can be more, but you're not. Or maybe you're not making as much money as you'd like to make, and that makes you unhappy. Or maybe your relationships aren't that great. And even if at some point something has happened that was outside of your control, you have to be willing to just accept responsibility 100%. Because maybe you can't control everything, but you can control the way you react to everything. And so you have to look, and most of us don't want to look. It's like when you were a little kid and you were scared there was a monster under your bed or in your closet, you would just stay in your bed and hide under the covers instead of going and looking and saying, wow, you know what, there's nothing in here, there's nothing underneath the bed, there's nothing, it's just me making myself all scared and freaked out for no reason. So you have to grow up. You have to be an adult. You have to be responsible and say, look, I'm going to look under the bed. I don't know if I'm going to like what I see when I look under there, but I'm going to be willing to look under the bed because my life will never be as good as it could be if I don't do it. And you look and you say, hey, look, I need to lose some weight. I just lost 40. It's been 40 pounds I've lost over the last year. You got to be willing to say, hey, look, I have to do this. My general health and my mental well-being is on the line here. and nobody's going to do this for me. And so this sense of control, unfortunately, you can't get it by ignoring things or by hoping that somebody else will change it for you. You're the one who has to do it. And unfortunately for many people, nobody really teaches people, like in schools and universities and things like that. Like, there aren't really any people out there that are showing people like, hey, look, if you want to feel fulfilled on a daily basis, you need to be thinking through and working on, like, taking responsibility for everything in your life in a way that it leads to you taking the right actions to living a good life. And the interesting thing is, 7 years ago, when I first started my business, I had no money. I was living in a spare bedroom of a family's house. I had a card table for a desk and a computer that barely worked, but I was waking up every day excited, and I was waking up in this state of like, wow, like I can tell, like I'm gonna go places, I'm gonna do things, like things are happening for me because I'm making them happen. And when you take control, the cool thing is you might have a lot of hard work to do, but there's a certain level of like excitement that comes as a result of that, because you know that your future is in your hands. You're the one who can make it better. You're the one who could build whatever kind of life you want to have. And when you take those actions and you take them, there's a great book title. I haven't finished reading this yet, but it's something like discipline, long discipline in the same direction. When you have long discipline in the same direction, your life can become so good that you wake up some days and you can't believe this is real life. There are days that I wake up, I live in Puerto Rico now, I've traveled to 5 or 6 different countries in the last year alone. The things that I've done and experienced are so far above and beyond what I could have ever imagined that I wake up with a sense of disbelief. I almost wake up thinking that this is the dream and that my dreams are real life, because I could have never imagined it when I first started 7 years ago, despite knowing that it was possible. And so it might be hard and it might be scary. And to be honest, it's 100% going to be hard. You're gonna wake up and you're gonna have days where you feel like nothing happens, nothing works. You're just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and nothing seems to come of it. You just work harder and harder and harder. You're not getting enough sleep. You're working hard. You're dealing with angry people. You're dealing with all of the problems that come with living life in general. You're dealing with that stuff, and there's gonna be days where it all sucks and everything goes wrong and nothing is progressing at all. The point isn't that everything just happens for you because you've decided to take responsibility. The real world is still the real world. You're still going to have struggles. You're still going to have failures. You're still going to have all of the things that are already happening to you. The only difference, though, is that you're now somebody who has taken control of their life. You have a direction you're heading in. And as long as you're staying focused on where you're going and you're controlling your actions and doing what you can do, both to be able to make progress and to be able to prepare for the inevitable things that are going to show up to try and steer you off course, if you do that, it's all going to be worth it. And one day maybe you wake up and you say, I can't even believe this is real life. And it's worth it. It's worth it. You'll wake up in a different place or a different country, or maybe you'll just wake up in the same place but in a nicer house or a nicer apartment or whatever it is that sounds the best to you, and you just can't believe it. And this sense of like, wow, I can't even believe this is real life, it's one of the best feelings, because you only have to feel it once for your overall level of happiness to be like a whole point higher every day. And I can tell you from experience, from somebody who is literally like a 2 out of 10 for a level of happiness, that I'm now probably somewhere around like a 7, which is perfect for me, because 7 is not too crazy. I'm not like losing my mind happy, but I'm also not just totally depressed. And that level of happiness and fulfillment is worth all of the days. And I still have days literally earlier this last week, I had a day where everything went wrong. It was like nothing I did was working. I was doing the right stuff. I was doing my work. I was, reaching out to clients. I was doing everything I needed to do for myself and my business and my family. And literally everything was going wrong. Nobody was answering the phone. Things were breaking. People were telling me to fuck off. I was getting all kinds of stuff just all at once in one day. It just all went wrong. And it didn't matter that I was doing all the right things. But the thing is, when you've gotten a real grip on your life and you've taken absolute control, what happens is when you have those days, it doesn't affect you as much because you just know, hey, this is just one of those days. Like that like that Limp Bizkit song, it's just one of those days. Like when you get going and things are just not going right, instead of saying, wow, I'm a failure, and making it a personal thing, which it isn't, you just have to acknowledge that some days are gonna be like that, and that when they come, you can be grateful for them. And this sounds weird to a lot of people, but you can be grateful because of the fact that you're going to learn and you're going to become stronger and more capable as a result of those days happening in the first place.